Breaking news. You have entered the looking-glass world of Putin's Russia. In an effort to remove the defense minister, a group of mercenaries takes control of a major city, shoots down several aircraft, and advances a column of tanks to within 125 miles of Moscow. The president swiftly granted them amnesty and allowed their billionaire commander to return to Belarus unscathed. A political opponent orchestrates nonviolent demonstrations and runs a campaign for fair voting. He was falsely accused of extremism, and now he is incarcerated in a concrete cell without access to even a pen and paper. Welcome to the surreal, Alice in Wonderland world of Vladimir Putin's Russia, where nearly everything is the exact opposite of what it seems. That could be true for Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of the Wagner Group and a mutineer from last month. In an initial statement released on June 27, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko confirmed his arrival at an airbase close to Minsk. But on July 6 he changed his story, claiming the mercenary boss was in St. Petersburg all along. Stranger still, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov claimed ignorance of the whereabouts of the man who had just rocked the foundation of the regime. According to Prigozhin's statements to the press, the Kremlin, neither the ability nor the desire, to monitor his whereabouts. Peskov revealed on Monday that Prigozhin met with Putin in the Kremlin on June 29, just days after his revolt, and that the president offered the Wagner boss and his men further options for deployment. Despite Putin's assurances that the rebel leader would be safe, he should remain vigilant. Others who have breached the Kremlin have mysteriously perished from rare poisons or accidents. The mutiny led by Prigozhin and the events that followed have exposed the unusual dishonesty that pervades Russian public life. These days, a polygraph might be helpful in making sense of Kremlin politics. Alexei Navalny, the jailed opposition leader, found the news of Prigozhin's rebellion so far-fetched that he initially dismissed it as a joke or an internet meme. He had no way of knowing about the mutiny while he was locked up. His lawyer had to tell him. Every totalitarian regime is rife with inconsistencies. Readers of Orwell are well aware that war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Putin's sloganeers might come up with a few more examples of contradictions. Truth lies. The unreal is the real. Spreading false information about the war, i.e., reporting accurately, in modern-day Russia carries a prison sentence of up to 15 years. A judge decided that Vladimir Kara-Murza, a brave pro-democracy activist, would get an additional 10 years in prison for accusing Russian troops of war crimes. Putin's rhetoric reflects reality like a mirror. The president insisted that Rostov was solidly behind him and the constitution even as citizens cheered the mutineers and jeered the police. Afterward, he expressed gratitude to the armed forces and security agencies for performing in a firm and coordinated manner. They hardly did anything at all. Subterfuge is another skill possessed by Russia's leader. It is said that he has set up multiple carbon copies of his Kremlin office to hide his true location. Putin could just as easily be in Sochi or Valdai when he appears in Moscow on TV. According to a defector from his guard service, he now routinely takes secret train cars to avoid detection by flight radar. Prigozhin's moment of truth in a video released just before his march on Moscow may have been the most subversive act among all the lies. He went on a rant accusing Russian authorities of plotting an invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and using this as cover. Nothing out of the ordinary occurred on February 24, he said. He refrained from directly accusing Putin of lying. However, he portrayed him as a fool who was tricked by power-hungry generals and greedy oligarchs into starting a pointless war that has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of Russians. Even worse for the Kremlin, many Russians will likely believe Prigozhin's claim because it comes from a staunch nationalist. That's probably why Putin held off on using force against him at first. He appears to have chosen to begin by undermining the warlord's credibility rather than risk creating a martyr for hardliners. Pictures of Prigozhin's extravagant mansion have appeared on state television, signaling the start of investigations and leaks. It's the epitome of gangster chic, with a closet full of wigs and other disguises, gold bars, multiple passports, and caches of weapons. The president has no interest in politics in this parallel universe. He rarely makes public appearances. He requires days of isolation from guests before he will sit down with them, and even then it's usually only at the far end of one of his famously long tables. He is shut off from the outside world, so he must rely on reports from his security services, the same services that predicted an easy victory in Ukraine but missed Prigozhin's rebellion. Putin briefly stepped outside his comfort zone after the mutiny to signal that he was still in control, which shows how badly Prigozhin rattled him. During his trip to Dagestan, he met fans in person, awkwardly kissed one teenage girl on the forehead, and posed for selfies with the group. After that, a girl of 8 years old came to the Kremlin for what was obviously a scripted visit and made a strange phone call with the grandfatherly president to the Russian finance minister. Nobody thinks Putin's newfound amiability will last forever. Alexei Navalny is, despite all odds, the real politician in Russia today. Through his attorneys, he has kept up his campaigning, commentary on events, interviews, and social media postings while incarcerated. He uses prison scenes to connect with regular Russians, using a blend of millennial humor and folksy irony. He felt for retirees outside as he saw prices in the prison store skyrocket the previous year. At the end of last year, he urged French voters to re-elect President Emmanuel Macron over the Putin-friendly Marine Le Pen, and he continues to do so every holiday season. Following the outbreak of hostilities, Navalny proposed a 15-point plan to bring an end to the conflict and restore a democratic Russia. In addition to fending off new charges from prosecutors, he is now recruiting IT experts, sociologists, donors, and volunteers for a long, stubborn, exhausting, but fundamentally important campaign to change public opinion about the war. Whether or not this will be more successful than Navalny's campaigns while he was free remains to be seen. However, the time may be right now, as reality is starting to seep through the Kremlin's filter. Putin appears to have a diminishing capacity to understand the threats he faces. When asked about Putin's invasion of Crimea in 2014, then German Chancellor Angela Merkel said he was in another world. The question of whether or not he will be able to return is now open.